In today's episode, we'll be adding scan folder and auto load database to the scan engine that we had completed up until the last episode. The download for the last episode is now in place, and you can go and grab the source code there if you have missed a couple. So we're going to start off by changing the graphics like we always do, and we're going to be adding new pages to our page table controller so that we can add a settings page. So let's go and do that. So we're going to name it settings so that everyone knows what it is. We're just going to add a new checkbox to it. This is going to be the checkbox we use to decide whether we're going to load our database or not. By default, I'm going to leave it checked and it won't save currently. It might be something we add in a later episode, but by default it will now load the database every time the client opens. So we're going to name it, as we usually do, to something important. So I'm calling mine load database CB, so checkbox. Now we need to go to our scan page and we need to move things around slightly. We've got to add a few more, we've got to add a couple of radio buttons so that we can decide whether we're scanning a folder or whether we're going to scan a file. This is going to be important later on when we change the scan, the functionality behind the scan button to ensure that we get the correct function for the correct thing we want to do. And so we're just going to name these, we're just going to change the caption so that the user knows what they do. I'm going to name one scan file and the other scan folder. Now I'm going to go down and change the name. This is important. Again, we need to find these later on when we're coding. And so I'm going to name it scan file radio button or RB1, and then scan folder RB for the second one. Now I'm just going to move these around so that they look fairly pretty. And I'm going to, by default, check the scan file. So we're going to save that, make sure nothing gets lost. And that is all of the graphic changes we need to do. So we'll jump straight into the code, I think. We're going to need to add a few functions here. And so to start off, we're going to change our scan function. Oh no, we're going to change our browse button first. There's no point in changing the scan button yet. So we're going to do an if, simply if it is or if it isn't. So we're going to if it is scan file RB, and if it is checked, so if it's clicked on, then we want this function, which is we're gonna take our old open file dialog and just drag it up into there. It doesn't need to be changed, and just align it properly. And then we need to add another function, another if function that says if scan folder RB is checked, we want to load a different open dialog where we can select a folder and not a file. So it's going to look pretty similar, but it needs a few things changed. So we're going to go ahead and create another T file open dialog with the create command, and we're going to give it an owner of nil again, because we're going to destroy it at the end of this. And then we're going to start a try like we did with the one above, and we're going to go to finally and click free. And here's where we're going to change our settings. So this open dialog needs to show folders and not files, and so we need to tell it that we want just files. We want just folders, not files. So we're going to do options, and in our options we're going to put pick folders. And that's important. We want the user to be able to pick a folder and not a file. So now we're going to continue with the same as the one above, except with our different options. Now we're going to use the same edit box to drop our file name in, except from our file name now needs a slash at the end, so that we're able to use it as a folder. We're going to save that. We're gonna move on now. I've left the image on the screen long enough that you can see what we've done, and just clear up. We're just going to clean up some of that. Right, so that's now done. Now we need to go and edit our scan button so that it will change just as much as the browse button has changed. So if scan file RB is checked, then we want to use the scan file function. It's quite simple. You're just simply giving it a few if statements, and it will then change what the button does. So the next one is scan file.rb, and if it's checked, we want to use a function scan folder. We haven't made this function yet, so it's gonna give us some nice squiggly lines and tell us something's gone terribly wrong. So I'm just going to comment that line out for a minute and stick the text file in the end, in between the brackets. I haven't figured out what I'm sticking there yet, so we'll just have to leave it like that. And we're going to go into our scan engine, and into our unit called scan engine, and we're going to add a new function. We're going to add a new procedure actually. And we're going to add one called scan folder. Now this is going to use a search record, and it's simply going to loop around and scan each file in the record. So we need to give it a few variables first. We need to have the path, and that's just going to be a string at the minute. And we also need to give it a mask. A mask is used for determining what file types you want. I'm going to leave it as star.star, so everything gets scanned. But if you were just scanning executables, you could put star.exe or star.dll and change it up. And then we want to know if we're going to use subdirectories. So if we want to scan the subdirectories as well. So we need a few variables. First of all, we need a find. So we want to find. We need an integer. This is how many we've found. And we need a record. So we're going to name it search record, and it's a T search record, I believe. Yeah, that looks right. And now we're going to start coding our scan folder function. So we need to find, we need to use the L result, which is what we've determined above. And we're going to call a function called find first. Now it's going to require the path we have, so we're going to put path in. And we also need to put the mask in with it. We need to tell it what we want. And I've spelled mask wrong. And next, we need to tell it what we're looking for. So we're looking for files. So we're going to use fa any file, and we also want to look for directories in this loop. So we're going to use fa directories as well. And the last one is our search record. So we're going to use our search record. So we want to go for a while, which is a loop function, which is it will loop back and forward while there's still things to do. It will keep doing them. So while our number of results is equal to 0, we're going to do, and then we're going to begin. And in here we want to do our function. So we want to scan the files that we found. So we're going to get the file name, and by typing search record dot name, we're going to need to add the path that we're in, because it's not going to tell you what path it's in. And then after that, we need to call find next. Oh no, result, and I believe it's file next or find next. Right. And now we need to do our second loop, I think. Yeah, we'll do a loop for directories. So we're going to need to close our record before we move on to looping for our directories, because we don't want random results turning up that don't actually work out. You know, it will just throw more errors. So we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to do we're going to check first. We're going to check if we're looking for, if we want to include subdirectories. So if we want to include subdirectories, we want to continue. We want to search for folders, and folders that are inside the file path we're currently in. So we're going to copy the top bit because I can't be bothered to type it all out again. I'm going to do that. Yep, break it up there. I'm going to take the mask out, and we're just going to put star.star here. We want it to look for everything. And we're going to take files out. We don't want to look for files anymore. We're looking for directories. We don't care what they're named. So let me just gut this middle bit. And we want to check if the search name, so that's the name we're given by find next, is the dot or the two dots. Now these, I believe, are returned to the directory before, and yeah, so we don't want them. They're not actually directories. So you know, if as long as they're not either one of them, we want to continue. They're actually a directory. So we're going to call the function we're in again. This is going to create a loop where it goes through and looks for more subdirectories and more subdirectories and more files. So we need to use the path again plus the search record name, and this will give us our loop to go through the next folder, and we need to put a slash at the end to tell it, you know, we're inside the folder. We also want to transfer our mask that we've been given in this function, and we want to look through subdirectories that are inside of that one. We haven't exited by this point, so we need it. And we're going to find next again. And that's pretty much our scan folder function done. Yeah, it's pretty simple. We're looking for files first and directories, and if you have got include subdirectories enabled, it will continue. And we've got our scan file function in there, and then further down we have our scan folder function again, so that we loop into the next folder. And that's just there to make sure we don't scan something that doesn't exist, or attempt to anyway. So that, I'm going to leave it here for a second so you can get it, or you could pause the video. We're going to copy it and declare it at the top of the page so that we can call it outside of it. We're going to uncomment our line we commented out earlier and start filling in the variables for the function. Now it's going to ask us what files we want, and I'm going star.star, and we want to know if we're going to do subdirectories. So yeah, I want to do subdirectories. So now we're going to move on. I'm going to indent that so that I can see it clearly. And yeah, that's your scan bit done. So now we need to load our database. So click on the form, click down the events, and we want on show. So on the form show, we want to perform a function. So if we're going to use an if statement again, if load database cb dot checked, then we want to perform our function. If it is, if it is checked, we want to load our database. Quite simple. So we're going to copy the load database function from underneath, and it's going to require a file name, and we're going to give it a default file name. So this is a file that if you name it correctly and it's in the correct file path, it will automatically load that copy. So we're going to use get current directory. That gets our current directory, and then we're going to give it a default name to load the database as. So we're just going to call it database.dat. That's nice and simple, nice and clean, tells you what it is. We're going to hit save. We're going to do another if function. We're going to check if the file exists first. This is important. We don't want to be trying to load something that does not exist. So we're going to do then and then click begin, and we're going to open ourselves another begin, and we're going to drag our function back up into there. We're going to take the end off, and we are going to do an else and a begin. So this, if the file doesn't exist, we're going to show the message. Very useful to the user. So we're going to use show message. Very simple function. You just give it some text and it will make a little pop-up for you. So we're going to tell the user, the automatic load database function could not find file. It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward, to the point. And there was a bit that my computer went crazy there for a second, so I did pause it. And we're going to compile it. And we get the file's not found. We haven't stuck it in the right place yet, so we the function's gone off, but the file isn't there yet. So we're going to load a database, one that we've had before. And we're going to move it. We're going to open it and save it again. So I'm going to scroll down to my YouTube folder when I can see it. And we're going to grab our database from the last episode. We're going to load it. We're going to save it again. We're going to save it inside the projects folder. So this time it's simple antivirus, and then it will be my simple antivirus as the folder, the Win32 file, the folder, and then the debug folder. We're going to save it in here. This is where our program is currently running from, and it's going to look here for it. It's going to look in the current directory, which is this one. So we're going to save it as the name we wanted. We're then going to close. And after I fixed the bug, which was I forgot to put a slash in between, as you can see behind the screen, it has loaded. And now we're going to use it to scan something. So we're going to click scan folder, and we're going to go find us a folder to scan. I'm going to scan my YouTube folder. It's not too big. Plenty of files in it, and somewhere in there is a test file. And after a few seconds of waiting, there is our test file.